Good morning. Today we are going to focus on a couple of halachas in Hilchos uMattanah, Perek Ches. We're going to deal with halacha Aleph and Beis and Chav Gimel and Chav Dalet. The topic would seem to be, and that's what we're going to discuss, the halachas of a shchiv meira. What exactly is a shchiv meira? We'll let the Rambam explain that to us. But for some strange reason, he begins to tell us what's not a shchiv meira. We haven't even heard about a shchiv meira yet. And the Rambam starts off halacha Aleph with a list of sicknesses or disabilities and being perhaps very progressive, calling them all healthy people. So the Rambam says asuma, a blind person, oya piseyach, oya gidem, one who limps and one who has a problem and one of his hands are missing or whatever. Oya choishish b'reishai, or one who has a headache, or with his eyes, he has a problem with his eyes, the Rama makes an unequivocal statement. He is like a regular, healthy man. Whether he buys, sells, or gives a gift. Okay. Now, this statement is a bit strange because we have no reason not to think so. What would make us think otherwise? Until you come to Halacha Beis, and he says, but a chayla that is totally weak. In other words, he feels totally weak. Very, very elaborate. And his sickness, his weakness comes from a sickness. He can't walk in the streets on his feet. And this is, again, an interesting, very, very interesting words. And he is laying in bed, literally falling onto the bed. Hu hanikra shchiv meira. That's called a shchiv meira. Shchiv, he lays meira from sickness. Now, Rambam makes a statement. Umishpetei matanoisav einam kemat nasbari. They're not like a bari. And then he goes on to explain what way. That when a shchiv meira says, give so and so my nechosim, they all are Zechiyah after he dies, and he does not need to go through the usual process of writing a star, making a kinyan. And here the Rambam explains that with words that are not that simple to explain, but he the words of the shchiv meira as if it were written and given over. Okay, why? So the Rambam said, "The Davos Amidivri Sefer." This is a Rabbanan. Now, immediately, also they gave it the value of a din Torah, meaning it overpowers any other halacha that may get in the way of din Torah. And what's the reason for all this? That the shchiv meira should not become, upset when he finds out that his words mean nothing. So we made his words mean as powerful as can be to calm him down. That's the reading. I mean, just quoting. Okay. Is this Shchimera in any danger necessarily? No. The Rambam doesn't say that he's in a sakana. No, nothing there. Although we're going to see later a reason that some of the Mefarshim explain that, but it's just you don't want him to be in a state that's not healthy for him. Want to remain healthy. Okay, Halacha Chav Gimel talks about something else, but yet the Rambam seems to relate it to a Shchimera. Shchimera shetziva machmas misa. This is called a metzava machmas misa. Somebody who is really holding back. You're going to show us a daitay noite shumeis vaday. He was under the impression that he is going to die. He's certainly going to die. And you can tell from the way he's talking that that's what's going on. Even so, okay, this is more of a, since it was clear that it was because of his death, his imminent death, and Baruch Hashem he recovers, he's back to normal, and he doesn't get the money comes back to him. And then he talks about other cases in Halacha Chav Daled, where a person thinks he's gone, a person who is in those days when you went out to the sea, you basically knew you were risking your life. Somebody goes on a trip through dangerous places, somebody who has been sentenced to death, or somebody who's really in a state of sakana, and his sickness is getting worse and worse. So the Rambam says that any of these is like somebody who, and he gives away his money, is mitzava machmas misa. Any of these. A guy who's planning a trip to Australia by boat in those years was considered that, and if he says it, he's mitzava machmas misa. And then the Rambam writes again. Again, same words. For some reason, the Rambam has a liking to those words, as we'll see. He says it again later. And again, if everything works out good, it all goes back to him. All right, now the Gemara has psukim and Vaser Dafka from Zion. We learn out some psukim, and the shaila is do they really think it's psukim, or is it only an asmachta? That's a discussion for a different time and not for now. However, and the Gemara there continues on Kuf Mem Zayin Amid Beis Rava Amar Rav Nachman Matna Shchimera Midir Rabbonon Ba'almei. It's no psukim, put the psukim away. Shema Titcher Daite Olav. It's there for Shema Titcher Daite. Now, at this point, the Gemara doesn't say that they made it like the Torah. Later, the Gemara talks about Mechila of a star, which a person, a Yerush, can be Meichel. So here, the Gemara says, even so, here you can't, Osaka Shotay. So it seems to the Gemara, this is the only time you need this Osaka Shotay, because it's the only conflict you're going to get. But the Rambam obviously seems to learn that Osaka Shotay is part of the integral Halacha. Okay. Why does he need that? We'll talk about it. Now, I mentioned that the Rambam begins telling you who's healthy. Then he tells you who's sick. So on this halacha of who's healthy, says the Magen Mishnah, Zeh Poshut, ain't tzorach beer. It's obvious. Guy has a headache. Doesn't make him shchiv meira. V'aloshen dai b'kach shchiv meira. He's laying from sickness, and this guy, he's laying on a bed. The guy who's walking around because of that with a headache or his hand hurts. Of course, that's not going to be or a person who is perpetually sick because he can't walk well. That doesn't make him a shchimera. That we don't need a big, rocket science over there. Well, that's a problem. If you don't read rocket science, why does the Rambam introduce the whole halacha with that? Now, in Tur, Simmeration Nun, now Lochas of uMattanah Shchimera. So the Tur says V'chol gimel yomim harishenim yesh ledin matnas shchim. When he lays in bed, that makes him a shchimra. What we'll see through the difference between past 3 days, he's already thinking of that. Now, yeah. Then he brings the shit of the Rambam, and the Rambam doesn't hold like that. And he says the Rosh holds like that. So the Mesiasa explains. The Rambam writes that any chayla that's tashash keiche nikashivran. He doesn't write any time constraints. As long as he's laying machmas chayla, then he's a shimera. And the Rosh makes differences up to a certain time. He's a shimera. If he doesn't get worse, then he's just in his head, so to speak. He's worried. Okay, good. So he has an intimate machmas mis. The itur in Ois Mem, Garing Machmas Shimra, and this is brought down at Gois Maimonides also. He writes a tshuva to a goyin, and he writes as follows: a healthy person that writes a tzavah, and he writes that he's afraid he's going to die. He's afraid he's worried that he's going to suddenly die. So what kind of halacha does he have? And therefore he gives over so he says nothing, not mitzvah machmas misa. Unless he taka dies, then we see he had what to worry about. But other than that, we don't. Okay. What is that all about? We'll come to it soon. So I want to just give a overview of halachas and as very often in these type of halachas, the Aruch HaShulchan does a very good job of organizing. And a phenomenal job of organizing. I mean, it's incredible sometimes how he puts things together. So in this halacha, he as well does that, and we're going to go through his organizational abilities and how he has organized this halacha. So first of all, when it comes to shchivra, he tells us a bunch of things that we need to know about him. Why is this halacha all about? So he gives 4 different points about it. First of all, because the chayla by nature is not secure, and he has his ups and downs, and therefore you can't always make kinyanim. The second thing, which we saw in the Rambam, that if he will know that is not what he says doesn't get carried out, he's going to be in a lot of pain, and he will become depressed or bothered by it. And here he is the one that adds v'yavay l'sakon. That could endanger his life. So in other words, the takana was made to avoid that sakon. And therefore, what do they say? Whatever you want to do, what you do. And he said, why not? Why shouldn't we allow him to do it in the chasam? Usually we want you to make a kinyan. I mean, halacha requires a kinyan. But we said, in order to keep this guy as healthy as we can, who cares what he does in the chasam? And then he goes on to bring the Rambam. And he says, there's no svara to say that somebody who's a little not feeling well should be a din like a shchivra. There's no such a svara, and therefore he brings the Rambam. So again, we're back to the same question. There's no svara. Why does the Rambam have to write it? And then he goes on to describe when is his matana gemura, and when can he go back on it, and when he can't. So he says there are different halachas between shchimra, mitzvah, machmas misa, and these are the general rules. What he brings down. It's important to know them, just so that we're talking about a topic. We should at least walk away knowing the basic halacha. If he gave a guy who's a shchimra, and he says, my friend there, we're giving him the shchimra is going to give him $50. And he doesn't say a word that he's doing it because he thinks he's going to die. That's not a shchimra. That doesn't go under the top. Even though he is a shchimra, that's not what the chachamim were concerned about, and therefore nothing. If he says he's giving away all of his nechasim, all of his properties and his value that he has. So there we immediately understand that this is a person who thinks he's dying and he's doing it out of the reason for this. So there we're worried about him becoming, that will cause his death, or that can bring him into sakot. And that's the din of a shchimra. Such a person, if he becomes healthy, he does not happens. But again, as we said, if he gives some of his nechasim, he has a din of a bari, and he makes a kinyan, and there it's done. It's a done deal. Even though he thought he was dying, and he may have thought that that's not negated. He didn't give it because he thought he was dying. So that's the shchiv mara. Somebody who says clearly he's giving it because he really believes he's dying. Either he said it or it's indicated. And he says clear, or he says he doesn't want the guy to be kind until after he dies. So then it makes no difference how much he gives. No need kinyan, and he gets it back if he gets healthy. And then he has the difference, as we saw from the Machlekes, the Rosh and the Rambam, 3 days or not. And if within the 3 days, if within the 3 days or after the 3 days it gets worse, then he is definitely considered that he's doing it because he's a shivmara and he's all the way a shiv. Okay. So that's the general halacha. What we're dealing with is the shivmara mitzvah machmas misa, two halachas, giving all of it, giving part of it, and that's it. Okay. So now let's go back and analyze the halachas that we had here in the Rambam and get the Rambam's take on this new halacha of shchimera. So first of all, if somebody were to have to give a topic to this chapter in Rambam, you would have to say there's a chapter of a shchimera. If that's the case, the Rambam really did not set it up properly, if that were the case. And that is, he begins talking about a healthy person. And as we said, a healthy person that basically everybody understands that a guy who has his hand hurts is not a shchimera. Why would the Rambam have to tell us that? And also that this sentence doesn't make sense till we read this halacha. Doesn't make sense till we read halacha base. Because as of now, it's like you're coming along and telling me a guy who is healthy is a healthy person. Why not? What else is there? So if he would have started off with the din of shchimera and tell us what a shchimera, and then tell you, however, this is not, we can at least tolerate and understand that there's something being said here. But the way it's being presented, the presentation is really, really not fitting the way how the Rambam is so careful in his presentations all the time. Yeah. Now, Hareyu Kabari L'chol Dvarav. Again, what's a bari? What's a bari L'chol Dvarav? Where did we ever talk about halachas of a bari? We just talked about halachas. We never said anything about a bari yet. You should have said, ain't a shchimera, ain't not a shchimera. And that's all you should say. Then, what's his, the Rambam I know was a doctor. And I know he wanted perhaps to bring, but it's such a list of machlos. There's a much bigger list. What's the purpose of this list? Now, when it comes to shchimera, it does something really, really strange. And what is this? Einam kimat nasbori. What do you need that for? Go straight. What's this halacha? What is the einam kimat nasbori? When you need this whole introduction, say, right? And what happens if he says it? He goes and explains. He gives him we had one of kayomim and they be safe for him and all that. Now we explained that the Rambam seems to say that the shlei titra of daitei and they made it Kishal Torah is all one. And it goes hand in hand. When you learn the Gemara, it sounds like the Asal Kishal Torah is only relevant really to one halacha. And that's what Rishonim say. The Miri writes that regarding this halacha, it's Kishal Torah. But this whole thing but they say that everything is because of Shleititra died, and that doesn't sound like what the Gemara is saying. And then we pointed out that Rambam's in interest in the words Divrei Shchivra Kichsuvim V'Tzurim. He brings it twice in this parak, and in parak Yud he says again Halacha of Shchivra Shama Tzu Mana Lepleni Yumeis Yitnu Lacham. He says Divrei Shchivra Kichsuvim V'Tzurim. Again, all he had to really write Divrei Shchivra Kayomin. The Kichsuvim V'Tzurim is really not relevant to us. Why do we need it? But definitely not to repeat it all the time. Okay. And then there's a couple of halachas why the Mitzav Machnos Misa, he separates it so far from the main din of Shchivmera. And when he writes halacha Mitzav Machnos Misa, why does he have to stress again Shchivmera? Just right, I'm Mitzav Machnos Misa. Okay, so I think, again, reading the Rambam, which is what we try to do, the Rambam seems to hold that the topic, I want to change the topic from Shchivmera to Matnas Bori. There's two things. There's a Matnas Bori and there's a Matnas She'ene Bori. Shchivmera is just the one who's Eine Bori. So it's not, if you wanted, the topic of this parak is what is a Matnas Bori? The Rambam is introducing the concept of Matnas Bori. And obviously, what's not a Matnas Bori, and what the halacha is a non-Bori that makes Yizmatan. Being that, I don't want to mention that that makes sense why he begins the parak telling us that, guys, these sicknesses don't take you away from being a bari. Now, why would you think there is that even though it seems to be so poshut, because we know that a guy walking around with a hand. I just want to, before that, explain that if you look at the sicknesses that the Rambam brings, he brings two types. Ones that are, physical disabilities, finished, nothing you can do about them. And hopefully there'll come a time that they'll all get healthy, but basically, they're the sicknesses. They're disabilities that are there to stay, so to speak. And then there is the passing ailment that a person has. Now, perhaps, again, I'm just suggesting, looking at the words, that in both sets, he talks about what has to do with the head part of a person. And that's why he writes disabilities that have to do with the head. And that is Cheshish Bereishay and Be'enei, Suma, hands, Yadai, and Raglai, Pisayach and Gidem. And perhaps that's just going through the main parts of the body to show that these are three areas. That's what would fit. But and why is he telling you this? Because as we know, when the Chazal make a takana, and they say that there's such a thing called a matana, not a shchivmera, just a description later. But really, what we're talking about is a matana of somebody who's not bari, an unhealthy person is not totally healthy, which is not healthy. True, the takana was made for a shchivmera, but since he's not a bari, we could say that they just said blanket rule: anybody who's not under the state of brius, bekav habriut, He's not in the Brius mode, Brius status. He goes under this heading. Now, it's not a big Kiddush once the Gemara has established that. So the Rambam is here to teach us what a matnas bori is. He has to tell us these guys, despite that they are not bori, they are called bori. That was if it would be the din of Shiv Meirah was the name of this takona, it has to do with Shiv Meirah, then you can tell me that these are not a Shiv Meirah. No. The idea is to establish who is a bori. So now has to establish that. So he starts off with his in his beautiful, organized manner. Guys, these guys, although they are not, they have disabilities, they have mechoshim, they have certain problems. These problems don't take them out of the status of bari. And then he goes on to say that the Davazemi Divri Seifrim, and immediately, that he wants to say that the reason he does that is because he's learning Pshat in the Gemara, that it's not about just Titchev Daita. Well, just a Gezerah. I'm sorry. Again, he's stressing that all this, the Rayam, it's all about that's the halacha, and the Hagdara is Eine Bari, but even though the Hagdara is Eine Bari, but it has to be an Eine Bari. You want to know what's called Eine Bari? Somebody who can come to Tir Vadas, and that's the reason here he's telling you, and that's why he stresses right away that they set it up in that in a manner of Shleit Tzadai. And perhaps that's why he put such an emphasis on Kesubim Mesur. What does that mean? If the Takana were, well, we're making a new thing called Shiv Meirah. So therefore, what do we need to stress? Shiv Meirah is Kayom. We don't want him to get sick. Comes along and he tells us that the idea is that it's that really there's only one thing in the Torah, a matnas bari. So there is a matnas bari where the bari does the matana. There's a matnas bari where the chachamim filled the needs that are necessary for a matana, and they made it as if a matnas bari is going on over here. In other words, I'm saying there's no new takana Shemara. Shemara is just a bari, a person who the chachamim gave him the power of a matnas bari, and therefore they made it be like a matnas bari, no different. It has to be always be mentioned that this is not a new thing. This is what the Rambam is holding. This is the matana of a bari done by a Eina bari, and how could that be? Because they made it kiksul. And that's not also Kishal Torah. They said this is done. We are now making it Kishal Torah. We are injecting all the halachas that are needed in order to make this a regular matnas bari. So mitzvah machmas misa is belongs where it belongs. And he stresses because he thinks he's dying. And therefore, there's much more of a chashash tiruf. And there's a sakana to his life. Now, why does he write Shiv Meirah Shetziva Machnas Misa? Like the Itur, to tell you that you can't just come along and think you're dying and that'll be enough. It has to be part, it's a level of Shiv Meirah. It has to begin with Shiv Meirah. Okay, so now let's go back. Rambam holds that once a person is Shiv Meirah, doesn't matter days, 3 days, 6 days. What's the Shiv Meirah? The Rosh says that it changes Shiv Meirah to Mitzvah Machmas. The way we're understanding the Rambam, forget. There's no Shchivmera. The Rush says you're not a Shchivmera anymore because Shchivmera is a type of status. No, Shchivmera is not a status. Shchivmera is a absence of bari. Once you're a Shchivmera, you have to get out of being you're not a bari now. You got to become back a bari, according to that. And therefore, you don't become suddenly something else. You still a Shchivmera. Yeah. Okay. There is more to say here, but we're going to stop here. Everybody have a great day. Hatzlacha Rabba.